First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, great dialogue coming our way. We are going to talk about the mental health of our brave men and women who work in corrections. Question is, just like the thumbnail, does the public care? I mean, we don't seem to think so. Does management care? I hope so, because they're invested in our well-being, believe it or not. And we've done this topic before, but usually when we go to address the topic again, there's another perspective we're going to add. In today's dialogue, we're going to add our mental health once we leave this profession. We never really touched on that before, and I think it's going to be interesting to cross into that dialogue. Now, of course, who do we have on this show? Famous author. She's known around the world as Connie Alleyne, and rightfully so. That's your name. Hi, Connie.
Oh my gosh. These introductions are getting like bigger and bigger every time. I love it. Hi, everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. And most of the podcast stuff was a fly behind the wall, but I'm so busy with Anthony that I don't get to do that anymore. And I am the author of The Cage is Her Cocoon. I'm looking forward today to talking with Jay and really getting to understand everything that we can do to ensure that our wellness is taken care of.
And if you notice, there was a shot there by Connie. It's not about anybody else's dreams, but Gangi's dreams. I mean, I get it, Connie. I get it. That was a shot, but well-deserved, because she's right, guys. I'm very selfish in what I do. Now, but she did kind of introduce a guest that I don't know if that was in her wheelhouse there, but we'll go ahead and, now I might as well. It's no surprise here. Hey, actually, guys, a couple of days ago, we did an episode on what the inmates should expect from us. And that's kind of like from an agency level, us being as custody. And we had Dr. Lawrie on, and we decided to have him on again. And this is a topic that he has a passion for. So what's up, Doc? How you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. As Anthony said, my name is Dr. Lawrie. I am the chair of the Criminal Justice Department at Albertus Magnus College in New Haven, Connecticut. And prior to that, I worked 20 years in the Connecticut Department of Correction. I did my entire time at McDougal Correctional in Suffolk. And I am very much looking forward to discussing these topics, getting your rich insights and seeing in what ways we can collaborate and give the staff the best opportunities we can.
Now, guys, today's video is brought to you by Guardian RFID. So from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transfers jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. All right, guys, so don't forget, if you haven't, Tear Talk, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to my other sponsor, which is American Military University. And when we come back, let's touch up on officers' well-being. It is an important topic, guys, so stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we're back. Real quick, I just want to start off by kind of touching on stuff we may have touched on before, but again, always worth revisiting. We do have a lot of new subscribers that come in. We get about another 60 or 70 every week, hopefully more as we start to grow. So it's good to kind of touch on topics that, maybe they're not familiar with because we did the videos before they officially subscribe. One of the things I give to the new boots, because I want to kind of set a good foundation going in, is I always tell people, try to have an idea of who you are before you enter this profession, because you got to hold on to that. I mean, that's got to last you all 25 years, just some piece of yourself. Because if you don't have that piece, this profession will challenge you. It will get you to scramble. And if you don't know, who you are or have some foundation, then you're not going to understand where you need to be to find that normalcy. And also, I think your family is a good resource when it comes to that, because your family is going to know who you are when you're not wearing your uniform, you know, or in this case, when you're going through this heavy day at work and you're taking the uniform off. You know, you're having your family as that resource to be able to talk to. And yes, your family's going to have to listen. I know a lot of people think they need to protect their family, but trust and believe, you may think that you're protecting your family, and I get it, from the horrors that work behind the wall, but you're also isolating yourself. You know, you're not allowing your family to kind of help you go through what you're going through. And eventually, even if they wanted to help you, they can't, because they don't know who you are anymore. So I'm going to first go with Connie. Connie, you had a lot of years in this profession. I mean, how hard is it to stay connected to some ounce of who you are?
So it's, of course, it's very difficult. I mean, so we know that we go into this environment and there are different events and incidents that happen that really mold the way we look at things, the way we look at the world, the way we look at people. I mean, you know, it impacts our ability to trust, like the way that you may have this carefree existence out in the community when you've never worked in corrections. Like, I feel like we don't quite have that anymore. You know, certainly, you know, family is a good way to stay grounded. But our reality is that we can't unsee what we've seen, right? And we can't unlearn the things that we've learned, the different ways that we've seen the population manipulate, the different ways that we've seen our colleagues get hurt. Like, there's just certain things that we'll never be able to unsee. And so I think the one thing that does help you stay grounded is having family and friends that are not connected to work, because they take you, the conversation is different, right? Like, it's, I think, and those are the things that we need to help disconnect from the world we live in, we work in.
Yeah, what's great about this, guys, is when people give advice in corrections, sometimes the advice comes out general without any context. So it's good for us to kind of say, know who you are. And then Connie, and I'm sure Dr. J as well, is going to give us some context as to what that means. So again, hey, Doc, you know, what does that mean if I said, hey, kind of hold on to that piece of who you are?
Absolutely great point. And it is, you need to go into that job. I feel you need to go into the job very grounded. And, you know, to Connie's points, you know, exceptional. Corrections, in my experience, corrections is very unique. I had no aspirations at all to ever work in corrections. You know, I came out of college, I was a political science undergrad. Some of my buddies were going to take the test. I said, what's the DOC? He said what it was. It was either that or $180,000 deeper in debt to go to UVM law school. I weighed the pros and the cons. I took the test. Connecticut offered me a job. So back then it was a little bit different. And, you know, so I went into it at 23 years old, going into, you know, the largest maximum security prison in New England. And back then it was a little bit different. So I think your point about, knowing who you are, I didn't, to be quite honest. I didn't have that ground for the first 4 or 5 years. It was really challenging for me. It was emotionally challenging. I had a lot of struggles. It was a very difficult thing. You know, what you spoke about earlier about talking to your family, that was very difficult at times, because a lot of people, you know, your family loves you, they care about you, they want to know what you do. But as we know, the reality of a lot of the things we experienced, they may say they want to know what your day was like and what happened, but once you start telling them some of the specifics about that, you can see that maybe they don't. So you almost, to your point, I think you start to protect them from it. So you internalize a lot. And I found myself, you know, I fell into a situation where I was working a lot of doubles. So I'd work my shift. If I wasn't working, I'd go to the gym. Who do you train with? You train with the guys you work with. You go home you figure out what your sleep schedule is. Maybe you go out, you hang out. Who do you hang out? You hang out with the guys you work with, because they can relate to you. They could understand you. At the time, it felt safe. But in hindsight, it was absolutely wrong. I talked to a lot of students I talk to that think about going into corrections or law enforcement in general. One of the first things I tell them is maintain relationships, hobbies, and interests outside of the field. You know, it took me 10 years. In 2000, I went back. For me, it was education. I went back and did my graduate degree, and then I fell into teaching, and that was my outlet. And that's, for me, when my professional career, my life really began to change. Because prior to that, I was consumed with that, you know, at that time, prison guard mentality. And, you know, again, I think it is incredibly important to stay grounded have interest and maintain that and be aware of your mental health and have your family be aware of it. And when they tell you things, listen to them because they see things that you may not.
Right. And guys, you know, change is slow and subtle. So if you really have that ground, the cool thing about it is you're going to recognize any slow shift. Because really, you have to look inwards first. I mean, you have to admit that you need help. And you may not always expect others to be able to recognize it because, again, it's going to be very slow and subtle. So the better that you know yourself, the more you're going to start to recognize the shift. And then hopefully you do what's best for you to address whatever that shift may be. Now, me and Jay were having a discussion first. I'll go with Jay first on this and then go to Connie. But, you know, remember, Jay was in the profession back in 93, retired, and I'm assuming 2013, he had his 20 years in. So, you know, there used to be a stigma when it comes to admitting that we were vulnerable because we expected from ourselves that we had to be a tough persona. And I don't know if that push came from our peers or how we perceived the profession. But now, because we're a lot more open, there's social media out there, there's groups that are actually saying it's okay if you're vulnerable, because in this profession, you know, the stuff that we see, you know, how we process it. So I think the greatest concern may not be so much if we believe we can, but rather if we believe if we need help, are there consequences? Do you believe that in today's world, most people may be afraid to admit they need help, not because they feel they have to be a certain way for the profession, but rather, you know, if I admit this, the job's going to come see me as a liability and start, you know, taking away my weapon, you know. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Doc?
I think those are very valid points. And this, for me, this is a little speculative because I said I have been out for 8 years. So the way I look at that is I know that early in my career, what the perception of mental health, wellness, or counseling was. And it was non-existent. It wasn't a thing. You just didn't do it. What I believe to be the case now, and I'm basing this on my experience in higher education, is I think the last generation or so of individuals are much more open and supportive of mental health. So I would look at it as this, again, I think historically it would be much more of an issue than it is today. I would like to believe that in today's culture, individuals realize the importance of that it's not a sign, and you know, it's quite the opposite. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for help, but a tremendous amount of strength. And I can speak personally. It wasn't, you know, I was retired probably 2 to 3 years before I really started to pursue my own levels with, you know, addressing my mental health issues. And it's something that in hindsight, I wish I did back then. So I believe that in today's climate, staff would be much more able to ask for that assistance and not necessarily be judged.
So, Connie, with that shift, so let's say you do have a staff that is more open to expressing their vulnerabilities, because again, they want to be right. They want to have that healthy mindset. Where does management play in now?
So I think for management, you really got to be open to listening, right? Because many times I think there's this perception that, you know, people are just trying to get out of work, right? Like, I think there is this mindset. I mean, so we do have some progressive managers who are receptive to the fact that people need a personal day. You need a mental health day. You may not be sick, but you just like, I'm just not here today, whatever that is. And I think as we've had more experiences, I think we have a better understanding of the liability it presents when you have someone on the job who is mentally unstable, and whatever that means, right? I think that we cannot ignore the fact that if someone is in a mental space, and I don't mean mentally unstable like they're psychotic, it could just be, I'm tired today. It could be, I'm exhausted, I'm feeling burnt out, right? And when you're feeling that way, you're more likely to make human errors, and human errors get capitalized on by our population. And so I think when we think about, as managers, our staff who feel comfortable to come and say, I need support, we have to give them the support. We can't say we support wellness, but then if someone comes to you and says, I need a day, I need a moment. And now I get it. We're also juggling the issue of staffing shortages. And so we may not have the flexibility to always give a day, right? But what does that do to the staff person who has had the courage to say, I need a mental health day, and it gets denied? And then they're on the job and then something does happen and there is some negative outcome, right? So I think as managers, we have to find the balance to say, okay, we understand the mental health concern. We're going to make best efforts to get this person the time off that they need or the help that they need before it becomes an incident where, you know, the woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? Like, oh my goodness, they came to us, they said they needed the time off, and now look what happened, right?
Yeah, and for the people that are misusing it, because I mean, you did touch on that. I mean, look how it affects the credibility of your peers. I mean, that's tough. You know, you're sitting there misusing it, and then you have someone that really does need it. You know, and now this person is seen as less credible, and therefore management should be acting on universal precaution, but you know, maybe the pressures of the time, and they're focused on staffing, and they minimize this person's concern. You know, so I kind of see two people at fault. Definitely management, because they're in the higher level and they're in the position to commit to an action. I get that. But I also don't like people that play on that and use the profession as a way to, excuse their behavior when they're doing something foolish, or they just want a day off. Yeah, I had a rough day yesterday and I just need a day off, when they really just, they're just taking a day off so they can go party or do something and not really care for the people now that may have had other commitments, or maybe you do have someone that really is stressed out. So, you know, again, I like what Connie brought up there, because maybe we should be a little weary of the things that we are misusing and realizing how that can now affect someone else who really needs it, their credibility. And I see you in agreement there, Dr. J. What's your perspective on the people that misuse it?
I think 100%. And that goes to the point of, you know, as corrections being a team, you know, we are a family. You're outnumbered 120 to 1 when you walk through that door. It varies on facility. You got to rely on each other. Not, you know, so if something jumps off and I'm responding to save you in the unit, I have to have that same mentality off the job. If I'm going to, you know, you're working to protect each other in different ways. You know, situation with a code, you're responding to that immediately. But, you know, to Connie's point, which was fantastic, is that you can't abuse that. You have to, again, it's personal accountability. You have to know that if that's something you're going to pursue, you truly need to, and then you're not taking that from someone else. So to me, it kind of circles back to just, you know, again, that family mentality.
Right. And I want to also, with the public, because I do want to address certain things there too. So when the public doesn't really understand what we do, they kind of don't see the realities of what we face. You know, we're first responders, guys, and we're in that environment that we cannot escape. And there is, you know, a heightened vigilance that we have to maintain, and the stuff that we see that the public doesn't realize, because again, they're never going to see what we see. I mean, even if you put cameras in there, it's going to be a filtered world. You know, it's never going to be the reality unless you literally want to put on that uniform yourself and commit to years. Because guys, let's just be honest with you. Maybe you work in a facility that is not as fast moving, but it only takes one incident to really change that perspective. You know, so again, and also it's the anticipation of something that could happen. That's another thing, having to know that, yeah, I just got through this big moment and trying to process that. And then all of a sudden another moment occurs. You know, so there is this level of concern that I feel that the public just doesn't get and will never get, only because it's not because they're ignorant. That's not what I'm saying. It's because unless you walk in the shoes of what we do, you're never going to be able to see or feel how we feel about the environment we work in. And Connie, when it comes to processing, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, the stuff that we have to run into, the stuff that we have to deal with, from suicides to assaults to just scenes where you have human life, you know, kind of just, you know, mangled. You know, we don't have a chance to process it at that moment. So, you know, what would be your recommendation for someone that's running to that scene, so focused to save a life and so focused on their job, and then finally, when it passes, because obviously they don't get a chance to process in the moment, what should be their next step? Should they just say, well, I'm okay right now, let's just get things going, or should they take a stop, even if they, think they feel okay? Should they just stop and maybe look around and say, you know what, let me just process what just happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know that our system gives people the opportunity to process, right? Because as soon as an incident happens, what's the first thing you got to do? Anyone involved needs to go write. They got to write the report. They got to document everything that they saw, everything that any actions they took. Right. But I think once we are able to take that moment to step back from the sort of operational requirement, right, I think that is the point where we can say, I need to take a pause. And even if the person doesn't advocate for themselves to take a moment, I think any good manager is going to pull those people offline, whether it's for an hour, it's for whatever time they need, just to let them kind of sit with it for a second, because sometimes people don't think they need it, right? The adrenaline is going, the heat of the moment is still there. And so they're kind of just working or operating out of that space. And so, yes, I think the tactical pause is important, but I think it's also, I know there are different crisis teams who come in. I mean, we need to encourage people to really get involved in those discussions or the debriefings or whatever those crisis management systems we have in place, so that even if someone doesn't even realize they're going through like that traumatic space, at least there's a process in place that allows them to process what has happened. Now, I think it's great that there's EAP and there's all these other resources external, but it still is on the individual to go out and access those services. And sometimes, I don't get the time off, so I can't go access EAP. I can't go seek out mental health support someplace else. So I think if we as a system build in that mental health component that kind of acknowledges this is an event, it is not a normal happening for any human being to experience, right? Regardless of how long we've been in the system, it becomes a normal process for all of us to kind of debrief and take a moment after there has been a critical incident.
And by the way, I love the crisis management teams, the CISM teams. I mean, they're reactionary, but they're preventive. They're reactionary when after an incident we come and we make sure everybody's okay, but just their presence and the dialogue that they have can prevent, let's say you have an inmate suicide, say you have an officer suicide. The reactionary team comes in at first, but their response will prevent someone else from maybe taking that leap as well. And also, I believe that more agencies should invest in that critical incident stress management team, but the team should be proactive, which means that you don't wait for it to be requested. These are moments you come in, especially guys, inmate suicides. We are affected by that. You shouldn't wait for somebody to react to that, because sometimes we as custody don't think it's okay for us to have a reaction to that. Yes, guys, it is. And if sometimes we may have that tougher exterior, then bring the team there. And I guarantee you, when that team is walking around, because the team should be proactive, they shouldn't wait for people to come to them. When the team is walking around, they're going to notice that there may be some people that are going to hint that they want to talk. And that's where the team has to kind of, be a little bit more proactive and try to engage in that dialogue. And I do have two questions for Dr. J, but first, I know you're going to want to comment on the CISM thing. So let's start with that first, because that was something that you were talking about on the drive-in. So what's your thoughts on the CISM team? What would you expect from it? You served on one. I mean, how important is it? And by the way, when you served on one, so this is going back, you started the career in 1993. So how long ago was that when the CISM team was implemented?
Okay, so I'm probably going back. I want to say it was probably 98 or 99 that I got involved with it, and I did it for about, I believe, 7 or 8 years. So I thought it was a fantastic option. Again, obviously, we had EAP, employee assistance, and that was an external. The thing I found about the critical incident is that I think it was a relatability issue. Staff, I think, felt more comfortable talking to other staff because they got it. Some people still saw that stigma to it, but I think just being around them, a lot of the meetings I had, it was not in the comical sense funny, but I'd have an officer come in and have a real hard exterior and tell me about how much is this thing is a complete waste of time. And while he's telling me what a complete waste of time it is, he's talking about how this is impacting him. And then you go back and talk and kind of keep, while he was telling me how much he didn't want to be involved with it, he was becoming very involved in it. So, and it wasn't until the end that he kind of realized it. So it was, I think it's a very cathartic thing. We're trained and conditioned, in my view, to not feel, not have those feelings. You have a situation, you have an inmate suicide, you cut the inmate down, you go through the whole thing, and that's not a normal event. But in our setting, it was. And for a lot of people, again, whether it was a sign of weakness or whatever they perceived it to be, they were hesitant to want to talk about it. So I think, again, for me personally, I think that team was tremendous. And I would say 99% of the feedback I got from other staff felt the same way.
Right. Now, I know Connie may have limited time. So are we still good to go, Connie?
Yeah, I'm good to go. I'm going to still be in it. I can multitask.
A big day for Connie's daughter. It's the 5th grade dinner. So I don't want to, I want to make sure that, Connie doesn't, miss out on, obviously you have to pick her up. So
obviously.
I just want to make sure. See, guys, I do care though. I want you to know that, and also, if Chair Talk versus Connie's daughter, it's going to be Connie's daughter 100%. So I want you to know that, Connie. So we're able to continue moving forward. But I do have another question for you, Doc, in relationship to what we got into about the public. So I believe that if we really cared for those correctional officers, there would be some level of recognition or respect towards what they do. And I think that would show them that we care. And I think that could be a great motivator. I mean, not just for them to continue dedicating themselves to the service, but also to bring other people in that kind of, okay, this is a profession that has value. I want to get into that, and you get those professional people. But you mentioned something right before the show about that law enforcement title. Now, I'm in a state where we are law enforcement. We are senior correctional police officers. But I do know that title does matter, because with that title comes a level of respect. So how important do you think that recognition is, that title is, to our mental well-being? Do you think it's related or not?
I think it's absolutely related. One of the ways I look at it is when you look for states or agencies or department that don't recognize corrections as part of the criminal justice system, I don't believe that, because the reality is when you look at one of the biggest issues we're looking at right now is criminal justice reform. So the police, courts, and corrections. Well, the largest component of that we can really control is corrections. People talk about, the laws are wrong. Well, that falls on Congress. Until Congress does something, we can't do anything about the laws. Obviously, there are a multitude of issues relative to policing, community, and those are being worked out. But when you look at the largest, probably financial aspect of criminal justice reform, it centers around mass incarceration. And if the movement is to do whatever we can to successfully reintegrate individuals from corrections back into the community, I feel that starts with having the most professional and respected staff members working with them as possible. I think that I think it sets up. I think it's a great mentoring. I mean, there are so many different ways you can look at it, and I believe the more respect that correctional staff are given, I think it makes a little more of a validation process, and they have a little more pride in that. I think that reflects in the type of, the concept of, I still hear, in today's climate, with everything being, the correct term, everybody's very afraid to use an incorrect term. People still throw prison guard around like it's 1974. So, and that like somehow that's still acceptable. And I think, I think that needs to change. I think, and I think in order, one step would be, to your point, professionalizing it and recognizing them as actual law enforcement officers.
Yeah, I remember, and I shared this on a video, guys. Want a chance, you could put correctional officers are not a stepping stone. I don't know if people felt a certain way, but I did when someone said that I'm a correctional officer, but one day I'm going to be a police officer. And it was kind of, they weren't even focusing on now. They were focused where they were going to be in tomorrow. And they felt the need to justify that they were a correctional officer by quickly saying, and one day I'll be police. And I was like, there are people here that chose this as a career. And the reason why you're saying that you're going to be a police officer one day, because I knew this person, was because you're not happy where you're at now. When I ask you who you are or what you do right now for a living, the answer is what it is, correctional officer. I didn't ask you about tomorrow. You felt the need to qualify your answer by adding tomorrow because you weren't happy with this. right now. And the video I did basically expresses the fact that enjoy the moment. Even if you want to become a police officer, then take that as a move sideways, not a move up. Because if someone says, I was a correctional officer and it gave me the best tools to step up and become a police officer, then how are we looking at the police as a better profession than those in corrections if the best tools that you got to communicate, to handle yourself, to work in that environment with that level of authority and confidence, if it comes from here, then I would think where you got the best training should be held in a higher level of regard. And Connie, I got to ask you the same thing, Connie, when people, because you get it from the medical side too. It's sad, but do you know, I found this out one day at 4 a.m. Now, Connie, I don't know what's going on with the screen right now. I don't know if you got like some green screen going on, but it's like you're like the fly in the wall, like the podcast thing. But I want to ask you a question because me and Connie did a show a while ago. And by the way, obviously we love our prison nurses, our jail nurses, but there was a misunderstanding what was said, which immediately we understood what it was and we corrected it immediately because it was a statement. We knew what we meant by it, but because there was some ambiguity towards it, we changed it immediately by the request of the person. As soon as they did it, which required me and Connie noticing it, both of us are not really good sleepers, and then just really doing something, I would say probably by 5:36, within a few minutes of getting that message, because we understood this person's perspective and we didn't want something negative to get out, even though when we explained what we meant, the person, oh, I get it now. I said, yeah, but the fact that you did it at first means we have to change it. But I want you to know, I'm just telling you what we meant so you know who we are. But there are a lot of nurses or people in the medical profession that actually may look down on the medical people that work in the prisons or the jails. I found that out recently. And Connie, I mean, am I right about that? I mean, are there some people that may work at hospitals and stuff that really kind of don't understand the work that's being done by our medical professionals behind the wall and kind of look at that as a step down?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we've kind of been trying to navigate just in general, right? Like interviewing nurses who are coming in, even their questions sometimes are kind of like, so like, am I doing real nursing work? Like, what exactly would I be doing? And, my response is you're probably going to work harder here than you work anyplace else. Your clinical skills have to be at a place where you can kind of almost be like a MacGyver, right? Because what you get in a prison or in any correctional setting is not comparable to all the special analytical devices and technical stuff that you would get in a hospital, right? So like we're really leaning on the nursing staff's clinical skills to help us get through when we don't have all of the great technology. So, the fact that there is even a question as to whether or not you're doing real nursing work because it's a prison, I think it also insinuates that somehow the care that's provided internal to facilities isn't the standard of care that you would provide out in the community. And I think that's a myth. People need to understand that all of our policies and procedures are based on community standards of care, right? If there's an ACOG guideline, if there's any AMA guideline, whatever those guidelines are, our policies and procedures are based off of that. And so any mental health professional who comes into the system is expected to understand how to operate within that scope.
Yeah, and I think we could probably do a whole discussion on that one day. If you ever want to, Connie, by all means, send it my way. I mean, we do have a few days off. Okay, so just joking. Hey, one more part before we come to a close, because I did say I wanted to add something new that we haven't discussed before, which is the end game. Connie went dark. I just want to, Connie, what is going on with this? Guys, you guys can't see it, but I don't know what's going on, but it's and I'm OCD, so I kind of look, or ADHD, whatever. I'm one of the two. So, hey guys, so I want to add something that we never touched on before. So we never really touched on the end of someone's career when they're moving into that next milestone of retirement. And the unique thing about this, guys, is especially with the profession. Okay, guys, so I like to say, to be more positive, that the profession has evolved. Now, some people, they may look at it as the profession is changing. I want to say that we've evolved because we're learning and we're always moving forward. So I connect evolution to growth. Some people connect change to being resistant, like questioning everything that's been done before and, our value. When you change something, that makes us question everything that we've done before. But if I say evolve, what does that do? That gives us foundation. That means we're all responsible for that growth. So again, I like to say positive. But for those that, are looking to rush out because the profession has changed so much that, 20 or 25 years finally speeds by, and then all of a sudden they're retiring and they realize, wow, I got nothing to do with my life. Again, they're such in a rush to get out of the profession. I get it, guys, because I'm feeling it now too. But not having that end game could just be as worse as you, or maybe more worse or worser. I don't know, guys. I don't know that. I got to be careful. I don't know if worse is a word or more worse than you actually remaining in the profession. Because ultimately, guys, I just want to say how I connect the two before I go, Dr. J. It's all about the value with your time. Sometimes we tend to get frustrated with a environment that doesn't give us value, doesn't give us purpose, doesn't connect to our internal why. Now, when you retire, and you may live the good life for a couple of weeks, but you start to get bored and you start to wonder, man, can I do something? Can I do something that has a more value, especially when you're retiring at a young age? Again, most of us, we could retire after 20 or 25 years of service. So I believe Dr. J was 43. I'll be 49 in my 25 years, or 49 or 50. So, you want to continue to have that mental health even after the profession is completed, which, by the way, bravo for those that do complete it. It's a hell of a journey. But I'd like to start with Dr. J on this. I mean, what are we doing for those that, or what should those that get ready to retire plan for to keep that mental health right?
I think, and as you said, I mean, this is something that's very personal to me. I think, and I honestly believe that this is something that individuals should start thinking about very early in their career in a very broad sense. Corrections is a unique career that the day you start, the day you can retire. So for me, it was that 20 years. So I was 23 years old. I knew October 29th, 1993, I can leave October 30th, 2013. Now, obviously, at my first day in the academy, it seemed like a lifetime away. But I'll be honest with you, about 15 minutes into the first presentation in the academy, I made myself a promise. And I said that I would not stay a day past 20 because I wanted to. I would only if I wanted to, not because I had to. Because a lot of people get themselves in a situation where that's all they do. So I think there's a couple ways. I think you should have, you should plan for it, not necessarily plan for it, be cognizant of it. And as you progress through your career, you start to, do the things you need to do to get yourself to that end game. For everybody's different. We used the example earlier. I think a lot of our colleagues, on the job, they worked in the trades. They were plumbers, electricians. So when they retired, they just went into business for themselves, and that's great. As I said, I didn't have any marketable skill set, so I kind of fell into the academic. And now I see a tremendous need for that in higher education, in academia, in criminal justice reform. We need individuals with corrections backgrounds. Like I said, we have a lot of former attorneys, we have a lot of former police officers, but very few people came through the correctional ranks that can relate to the issues we're dealing with. When we talk about mass incarceration, we talk about community reentry, talk about parole and probation, we need individuals who are familiar with those processes. So whatever it is that interests you, be aware of it and start to plan for it. Because, I'm sure very similar to both of you, at 23 years old, 50 seemed very old. At 50 years old, 50 is not so old anymore. So it comes sooner than you think. And some people will make a much longer career. In your situation, you may want to stay longer, but I always like the idea of that being an option, not a necessity.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome. And the fact that, I think you said it also right at the very beginning, where I want to do it, not because I have to. And I think that's where the mindset's got to be the moment you enter in. If I'm going to do this, because I knew the same thing, started in 2002, knew I would retire or going to retire in 2027. So again, I always tell myself I'm not going to do a day more. So I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to want to do a day more. I don't want to be put in a position that I have to do a day more. And like you said, I had no marketable skills. And eventually people just, after a while, it was like fake. People kept on saying, hey, Gans, you have a big mouth. And there's only two marketable skills for a big mouth, and I'm not choosing the other. You know what I mean? So I went ahead and Connie?
You meant academic, correct?
I meant, I meant teaching. You know, the fun, Connie just, and she goes to church. Hey, Connie, what, I mean, in honesty though, just having fun. But in honesty, Connie, having your mindset prepared for tomorrow, you know, having that, I mean, do you think that a lot of people, when they get to retire and not have that plan, wind up becoming depressed and wind up kind of going inwards?
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the things we have to think about is that when in fact you don't have a plan, it kind of like the anxiety just builds, right? Because like now it's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? You know, and I think, you know, to Dr. J's point, it's like really knowing like, okay, so here's the goal that I've set for myself. And if it is, I'm going to do 20 and then I'm going to be done, then that's the goal. If it is that you're going to be doing more than that, it shouldn't be because like you didn't plan, right? Because usually that's what happens. Many people get close to that number and it's like, oh man, I haven't saved enough. I don't have, you know, I'm not ready, you know, and I think that's where you kind of get stuck and you become like, I don't want to say bitter, but that's when people like, dag, I gotta stay, right? Because now you don't have that plan in place. I mean, one of the things, so when I started in 2001, I wasn't necessarily deciding I was going to be there for more than 2 years. I was like, oh, that's it. I got 2 years. That's it. And, you know, like Rikers Island kind of just pulled me in. It was 10 years there. And even when I had the opportunity to leave, I still ended up going into another system and continuing to work. So I think, you know, for me, when I finally decided it was time, I did have a plan. It was like, okay, so we're going to go get this executive MBA. We're going to figure out how we're going to take those skills that we've acquired and market that differently. We know that they're transferable, but what would that look like? Or what could that look like? And I think we have to think deeper about it. And even in my book, one of the things I talk about is there is life after retirement, and you don't have to wait until then, right? Because you've worked in an environment where you probably learned more than you'll ever learn any place else. You don't have to wait to decide, right? Like those skills that you've acquired are not the ones that you would have acquired if you worked in a traditional work environment.
I will say, just a skill. Connie's multitasking right now. I don't know. I knew it. I knew it because that's a lot of sun coming through the windshield, the window. So on that note, guys, I thought this was a great topic. Definitely something worthy of discussion. Plus, it introduces us to Dr. J and his passion. So again, this could be something that we could always revisit and explore. You know, but the idea is to get it out, to show people that, you know, we are invested in your mental health and well-being, and so should the agency, because again, you want a healthy staff, right? I mean, you want to have an environment that promotes them to come to you and trust you, because if not, you're going to have people that sweep their mental health concerns under the rug. And next thing you know, you have a facility with no control, because the people that are in a position to have control have to have control of themselves first. And if you don't allow them to have that level of control because they don't trust you, then you're going to have all these codes happening and this us first them mentality, and you're just going to have a facility that doesn't operate as it should. So again, it starts with you, management. It also starts with the people knowing that I do have a concern, which, as I said, I believe we're more honest with that now, and then going to management and knowing that they can trust you to get them to what Connie had mentioned, and Dr. J, the EAPs, or just, I care about you. So let me see what I can do, and then we'll get you right back to work the moment you're okay. Hey, Dr. J, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, I just like to thank you for that. And just and one last kind of caveat to this, the importance, when we talk about the importance of planning, I'm sure that if we sat down, we could each rattle off a number of coworkers we had. I think 5 off the top of my head that within 6 to 9 months of retiring were dead. Because the mortality rates, I mean, these, you know, I can speak for myself personally, off the top of my head, I think 5 individuals within a 1-year period of retiring, you know, all under the age of 53. And, you know, there was obviously some health reasons. But I think to your point, it's imperative, you know, the physical health, the mental health, because individuals who come out of corrections have a lot to offer outside of the field. To Connie's point, the skill set to develop, you're not going to get those anywhere else.
And guys, can I tell you something? I don't usually do this, but the reason why your mental health is so important is because of this. Come here. The one that just snuck in. Get over here. Come here. Just say hi. Peek over there and say hi.
Hi.
Now, you know she's 8, right? I want to see her get married. Well, not really.
No.
Yeah, no, we talked about this, but you know, everybody gets the story. You know what I mean? Okay, obviously you want to say thank you to all the brave men and women who work correctional. You can say it. Go
I'm
ahead.
making a DIY puppet.
Okay, that's important. But yeah.
Hi.
No, say thank you to everybody working corrections.
Thank you, everybody, for working corrections.
There you go. All right, Mia, it's Daddy's time.
Wait.
Wait, hold on. Show's not done. There you go. See what you do there? You show some love and then you show authority. You see what I did? Love. Give her some time. Authorities to push. All right, Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to say, listen, no one is going to advocate for your mental health like you, right? No one really knows what your needs are, what impacts things have had on you other than you. And so I would just implore everyone to just be their own advocate. Like if even, we say it's hard to ask for time off, but your manager doesn't know that you're feeling burnt out unless you say, right? They don't know whether or not you're having some situation going on in your life unless you tell them. So just do yourself a favor and be your own best advocate.
Yeah, I love that advice because again, you have to recognize it first, right? Before you can go ahead, before anybody can help you. I mean, that's the key. And again, hopefully we told you by this dialogue. I think the key of this all is it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay if you're a peer to ask people, how do you feel? But make sure you stay to listen to that answer. Don't make that a simple cordial where how you feel and the person's talking to you and you're down the hall. When you ask somebody how they feel, you listen if they have a concern. That's what we do in corrections. That's how we take care of our family. As always, guys, the show is teared up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.